with action just about to kick off, and some drivers doing 72 hours worth of racing in 3 weeks. Let's talk about the end of this 24-hour triple header. Let's talk about the CrowdStrike 24 hours of Spa. And yes, this is such a strange year for endurance racing because you have 3 of the big 24-hour races back to back to back. Not all drivers will have done the triple header, but some of them have. In fact, if you have a look at the entry list, you'll find that Kevin Estre could full well run the full 72 hours, or at least the cars that he's been in could run the full 72 hours over the course of these 3 weeks. So unlike Kelvin van der Linde, it won't be the same because the WRT BMW retired from the 24 Hours of Le Mans, but has entered in all 3 24-hour races. It's a mixture of things such as the calendars for the Nürburgring circuit, meaning that you have a slightly later running than you have seen in some other years. And also the fact that the Belgian Grand Prix, being where it is in the F1 calendar, means that the Spa 24 is moved forward by a couple of weeks more than it usually is. And, yeah, Le Mans, it was in its traditional slot. It meant that there was an interesting clash last week between the NURB 24 and also the 6 Hours of the Glen. But either way, this race, the 24 Hours of Spa, is part of the Intercontinental GT Challenge, the same as the NURB 24. But it's not going to have the same thing with all the varieties of classes. No, this one is going to be, all GT3. Now, because it doubles up with GT World Challenge Europe, we have a bumper entry list here. 76 cars in total, which means if I'm doing my driver ratings and scorings, it's going to be long. We're talking, over 200 drivers. Maybe closer to 250, because I think some drivers are going to be sharing with 3 others in their car. So there are some 4-strong entry lists. For example, the number 2 Johor Motorsports JMR, which has HH Prince Jeffrey Ibrahim, Prince Abu Bakr Ibrahim, Jordan Love, and Alex Sims behind the wheel of a Corvette Z06. I'm not going to go through every single driver because, 76 entries. But I will give you the breakdown of it. 21 cars are going to be entered for Pro. That means all the drivers are Pro licenses. 12 cars are entered for Gold, which means that you'll have a Gold driver in there. Silver makes up 16 cars, Bronze 19, and 7 Pro-Am. Now, part of that is to do with the driver rating systems, right? So some of them will be entered as Pro-Am because one of their drivers will be Pro-Am. So, for example, the AF Corsa 70 and 71 are both Pro-Am. In this case, for the 70, Riccardo Agostini is the Pro-Am entry, and Stefan Lemeray is going to be the Pro-Am entry in the 71. Elsewhere, you've got, say, Haas RT, which is not the Stuart Haas or Newman Haas, as far as I'm aware. And their Pro-Am is Stephen Paulette. The AV rated by Car Collection Motorsport appears to not have announced, according to the entry list I'm seeing here, their Pro-Am, though that could full well change, and I'm looking at an out-of-date entry list here. But there are, like I said, a lot of cars that have entered in for drivers, and some cars that have got 3 entered instead. There are some drivers who you will have seen doing the Glen last weekend, and possibly Le Mans right before that. Matt Campbell, for example, or at the same time, you might have seen the likes of Sheldon van der Linde. Kelvin van der Linde did do the 24 Hours of Nürb last week, as did Kevin Estre. And both of them are going to be here as well. So there could be some drivers here who end up doing, or seeing their cars do the full 72 hours, which is a wonderful feat of reliability. Now, it's not always the same chassis, it's not always the same car, but it could happen, which is incredibly impressive. If you're WRT, for example, you do want to see your cars running the full distance because, well, there was the issues at Le Mans, where all 4 of them didn't finish. That's the 2 hypercars and the 2 LMGT3s. Yeah, it'll be an interesting one. But let's go through the schedule, though. I've missed out the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday stuff, which are things like the parade start. But starting on Thursday, you've got the McLaren Trophy free practice and I'm going to give these in local time. If you're in the UK, you just take an hour off. So McLaren Trophy Europe FP1 at 9 o'clock would be 8 o'clock UK time. Then at 10 past 10, you've got GT2 free practice. 11:20, you've got Spa 24 free practice. At 1 o'clock, you've got Super Trofeo free practice, and then some GT4 practice at 2:10. At 3:20, the McLaren Trophy FP2 goes on, and then you've got pre-qualifying at 4:30 for the GT2s, and at 5:40 for the Spa 24. Then the 4 qualifying sessions will run between 9:15 local time and 10:30 local time. So if you're in the UK, for example, that'll be 8:15 to about 9:30, and then they have night practice for an hour and a half just after the qualifying ends. Friday's action was the FP3 and qualifying for the McLaren Trophy starting at 9:30. Then GT2 qualifying at 10:15, GT4 qualifying at 11:15, Super Trofeo qualifying at 12:15, and then the first race for the McLaren Trophy at 1:35, at 2:55 the first race for the GT2s, and then at 4:10 Super Pole for the Spa 24. The McLaren Trophy will then have at 4:50 FP4, and then at 5:10 Quali 2. The first race of the Super Trofeos will happen at 5:55. Followed by the warm-up for the Spa 24 at 8:05, and then at 9:10 the first race of the GT4s. Saturday's action at 9:20 will have race 2 for the GT2 series. At 10:50, race 2 for the McLaren Trophy. At 12:10, the second race of the GT4s, and then at 1:40, the second race of the Super Trofeos. Spa 24 is scheduled to start at 4:30 local time, and unsurprisingly, is scheduled to end at 4:30 local time on Sunday. So if you look for that race in the UK, 3:30. Yeah. Now, if you're looking at the forecast, it is going to be important for the drivers and teams to get dialed in very quickly. Thursday shows spots of rain throughout the day, whilst there isn't likely to be much else in the way of precipitation for the remainder of the weekend. The high on Saturday will be 26 degrees, on Sunday 28 degrees. There's expected to be some cloud coverage on Saturday, but not much on Sunday. The low over the course of the race, I believe, will be an overnight low of 17 degrees in terms of air temperature. Track temperature will be different, but that's the air temp. If we want to turn the clocks back to last year, at the end of the race we had 8 cars on the lead lap. In 7th place, the winning goal, the Almanar Racing by Get Speed, but the winners overall were the Come To You Racing number 7 for Mattia Drudi, Marcus Sorensen and Nicky Thiem. The Aston Martin winning from the 296 GT3 of Pierre Guidi, Rigon and Rivera. The podium rounded out by the WRT of Sheldon van der Linde, Dries van Thor and Charles Weerts, who went on to win the IGTC Championship. But at the end of the day, it's going to be hard to predict a one to watch because, well, Bop, that changes race to race, year on year. It could be that the Aston is up at the front again. It could also be that it's well down the order. We'll have to wait and see for that one. But also, another thing that we're going to have to bear in mind is that it can also be down to luck in a 24-hour race. Who gets less track limits? The Spa pit lane is massive. You lose about 80 or 90 seconds if you have to do a drive-through. So you need to watch out for those track limits. You get, 4 hits in the 24-hour race? And Spa, Eau Rouge and Radion, going through Blanchimont. There are a lot of track limits that you could end up infringing on. And any sim racer who has done a race longer than, let's say, an hour at Spa will know the pain of that. So it's going to be hard to make predictions. I would just expect people who have been relentlessly consistent over the past couple of weekends to continue to be relentlessly consistent. So, Van der Linde. Either of them, really. Or, yeah, the likes of Kevin Estra. Anyways, those are my thoughts, those are my feelings, those are my observations. Let me know any of yours in the comment section down below. Thanks for watching, folks, and hopefully next week I'll be able to get a review out for this as well. Till then, it's bye for now.